Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second quarter meeting of the California Water Quality Monitoring Council. My name is Nick Martirano, he, him pronouns, and I'm the director for the Monitoring Council. Okay. So just go ahead and get started on time. A little housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded, so please mute your mics until you are desired to speak. If you feel comfortable putting on your camera, that is great too, but if not, we understand. I'm going to start off with roll call for the council members and alternates that are on the call today. And for anybody that is a non-council member and just an active participant, just go ahead and please in the chat, put your name and affiliation so I can capture that. For my notes, following that, I'll go and give a quick review of the short agenda, see if there's any adjustments, and then see if the action items are final. So go ahead and get started with the roll call. I will start with Cal EPA, Greg Gearhart.
Yeah.
He's here. Thanks, Greg. I know he's not feeling well. I'll make a quick announcement here that last time we met, Karen Mogus had just received a promotion to be the Chief Deputy Director and had to step down from her role as co-chair for the Cal EPA. And in the time between the two meetings, Phil Crater has taken over the deputy director role of the Division of Water Quality and will be assuming the position as co-chair representing Cal EPA. Yeah, he is, I think, planning to attend the meeting at some point and can introduce himself. I have a briefing scheduled with him next week, and we'll go over kind of the details of what the position involves. And by the time next meeting rolls around in September, he'll be, I think, ready to take on the role full bore. So that's a little bit of an announcement there. That's exciting. Phil's a great asset to the council and to the Division of Water Quality. Next is CNRA. I see Jen Eckerly is in the chat, but Jen is on board. Is Caitlin with us today?
Nope, just me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jen. Drinking water, Andrew or Christine?
Hey, good morning. Andrew Altsboat with Division Drinking Water.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Christine Sotelo here.
Hi, Christine. Public health, Anthony or Dave?
Hi, good morning. Anthony is here.
Morning, Anthony. Regulated POTWs. I know Lauren wasn't going to make it, but Sam, I believe, is here or going to be here.
Yep. Hi, Nick. Good morning, everyone. It's Sam Choi from Orange County Sanitation.
Morning, Sam. Regulated stormwater. It's not Grant.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Grant Sharp with Orange County Public Works, representing regulated stormwater community.
Thanks, Grant. I believe Brian is out today. Agriculture, Mark Cady. Not be able to make it. We'll see if he joins later. Community monitoring work groups, Helen.
Good morning, everyone. Helen Patanides, Community Monitoring Groups.
Helen. The public, Ray, were you able to make it? It's kind of tentative. I don't see him yet. And I know Fred will not make it today, so hopefully Ray can join us. Scientific community, non-academic. I see Steve.
Good morning, Nick.
Morning, Steve. For those that aren't aware, Steve is with the executive director for the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project. Scientific community, academic. Krista.
Hi, Krista Kamer, CSU Council on Ocean Affairs, Science and Technology. Good morning.
Morning, Krista. I don't think Steve Blumenshine is joining us today, but
I'm here.
Oh, hi, Steve.
I'm the alternate.
Yep. Water supply.
Good morning, everybody. This is Peter Broom, City of San Diego Public Utilities.
Thanks, Peter. I'm not sure if Adam's going to join us, but Adam, are you on the call too? Adam Quinones? No. Okay. And then our EPA representative, Eric, I see you.
Hey, Nick.
Hi, Eric.
Eric DeBakey, US EPA Region 9.
Thanks for joining us. All right, that completes the roll call. Good turnout today. Thank you, everybody. So for the agenda review, it's a pretty abbreviated agenda. We have a couple items. We have our normal member updates, following the public forum. I'll give my director updates. Then we have 2 items. One will be a kind of a kickoff item that'll be led by Greg. And then our to kind of lay the framework for an idea that he, myself, and Win Calgar and Grant kind of brainstormed over the course of the last quarter, kind of thinking up ideas that we could elevate for the council meetings over the next couple meetings. It's thinking about an open science, open data, leading to open government type of series that Greg will speak to. And following that will be kind of the first potential, well, the first talk and what could be a potential series, which will be a presentation by Andrew Hamilton, who is the Assistant Deputy Director for the Office of Information Management and Analysis and State Water Board. And he was going to talk a little bit about the role of the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program and the California Environmental Data Exchange Network within the open data movement and open science movement, and just talk more about that. And then following those 2 items and the discussion that follows, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about some ideas for the September 26th meeting. And after that, adjourn. The meeting, depending on how the discussion goes, could last as long as 1, but it could very well end early. So we'll just see how it goes. Are there any adjustments that need to be made to the agenda at this point? Just go ahead and raise your hand. Not seeing any. Great. The action items were distributed as part of the agenda. There really weren't many action items from the last meeting. It was really just for me to help develop this agenda. But if there are any comments or things that I may have missed, feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, we'll consider those final. I didn't receive any comments. Okay, great. So next would be item 2, which is a public forum. This is a chance for anybody from the public that wishes to speak on topics that are not on the agenda. That could be ideas for future topics or just bring situational awareness to the council members. Any members from the public wishing to speak during the public forum, please raise your hand and I will call on you and you'll have the opportunity to address the council. Okay, not seeing any. Go ahead and move on to member updates. We'll go ahead and go around the council members, and then I will give my oops, I have a typo from the previous one. So ignore the 2 bullets. My bad. And we'll go ahead and go around the room of council members that are here. Starting with Greg. Do you have any announcements?
I can't think of any. If you can think of any for OEMA, then I can't. My brain is a little mushy this morning.
Fair enough. Yeah, no problem. I will I'll think on it. Anything from DNRA and the Ocean Protection Council, Jen?
I don't think so. Thank you.
No problem. Andrew or Christine, anything from drinking water you want to talk about?
I just wanted to mention, just make sure folks were aware, we just released our most recent drinking water needs assessment on Tuesday. And it covers failing drinking water systems that are at risk. There's also the big update this year was on the cost of finding solutions for those systems. So I just want to make sure folks are aware of that. And I think it does fit into the theme for today around open data. I mean, that's one of the things that we've really strived to do is put out the data and do the analysis and just show what's out there. And so definitely it's something, we could think about discussing at future meetings, how some of our efforts, and we've worked with OEMA and Greg and others on all different pieces of it, but just wanted to let folks know that that's out there now.
Thanks, Andrew. Is there is that just release, or is an opportunity for a mechanism for folks to provide feedback?
That's the release of the final. So that we
Okay.
started the public process, well, actually like a year and a half ago on the cost model, and we released a draft in December. So this is the final out now.
Great. If you can do me a favor and drop a link into the chat for folks to kind of quickly get to it
Yeah,
on the website.
I can do
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Christine, anything from the ELAP side of things?
Nothing over here.
Okay,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
asking.
Anthony, anything from the public health? Want to highlight?
Nothing from me for now. Thanks, Nick.
Okay, great. Sam, anything from the Public Treatment Works?
Nothing from here, Nick. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Grant, stormwater?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Just wanted to put in a plug for an upcoming California Stormwater Quality Association seminar event that will happen on July 11th. It is open to anyone to attend. You can register through the Casco website. The theme of this seminar is going to be stormwater science and research. They have not posted an agenda yet, but that will run from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on July 11th. And that's all I had, Nick.
Okay. Do you know if is that like a in person only or hybrid or virtual?
It is only it is webinar only.
Okay.
Casco has gone to they used to do quarterly meetings in person, but they've pivoted since COVID, and now they're calling these the seminars part of a seminar series. They're going to happen quarterly, but they are virtual only.
Okay, well that's great. A little bit more accessible to a wider audience. Thanks, Grant.
Sure.
And if if it's easy to drop the registration link in the chat, that'd be
I'll do that
too. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Helen, anything from community monitoring groups?
No, nothing from me. Thanks.
Okay. Not sure. Ray, were you able to join us? Not seeing him. Okay, moving on. Steve, anything from science community?
Yeah, two things that are going on that are maybe nice lead-ins to future agenda items for the council. The first is that about a month ago, the White House released a national eDNA strategy. One of the things that was cited in that strategy and has been a focal point of some of the discussion is how well the Monitoring Council's committee, Molecular Methods Committee, has been contributing to the movement of that effort. There'll be some additional investments and initiatives coming out of the White House regarding the implementation of this eDNA strategy. I think there's a real opportunity for California to get deeply involved in helping to set where the nation and honestly where the world goes with this. In addition, the OPC, Jen Eckerly, is overseeing a project that came out of the legislature to develop eDNA libraries for the intertidal environment. I think, again, that's going to be groundbreaking in terms of how a state owns something like that and provides leadership. So you might want to look at the strategy document. It's on the White House's website. But more importantly, Nick, I think it's a great topic for us to take on, kind of where is the state going on this and how do we interface with the state, and getting some of the leadership from either the White House or from the task team that's putting together the implementation plan to talk to us, very doable, I think. Second topic is this committee has often talked about maybe hosting a meeting that focused on not just monitoring, but modeling. And one of the things that happened a few weeks ago is for the Roms-Beck modeling that SQUIRP and UCLA have been doing, there was an expert review panel that got together for roughly a year to review the work that had been done. They came out with a draft report a few weeks ago. It's interesting reading, people who want to look at that kind of thing. But I think, in fact, in absence of the travel ban, I think, Nick, we were actually going to hold the meeting here at SQUIRP that we do annually and focus that around modeling, not just that one model, but modeling in general. That becomes even more timely now because that report provides us the opportunity to kind of talk about where we go, because a large part of the report had to do not just with the technical aspects, but essentially how you turn a model into a community model, how you make it something that the community can use. And I think that extends well beyond just the Ramos-Beck model, and maybe kind of a new, even, I would call it direction, but a new facet for what the council could work on.
They're great topics. Thank you, Steve. And is that report, is that on the SCORP website, the technical report?
Not on the SCORP website. I would assume National Water Research Institute was the one that that convened the steering, convened the expert panel. I assume it's on their website.
Okay.
I have a copy somewhere. If you think it would be helpful, I can put it in the chat.
Great.
But
Thanks.
Steve, that report is still draft, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware that that is continuing to be a work in progress.
So actually, even to the positive,
even better, yeah.
it's a draft that they are presently asking for feedback on. I think the feedback is due July 10th. So even more reason to take a look and ask questions of the panel if what's there is not clear.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. Sam, you might want to, if Steve can put that in the report, maybe pass that information on to Lori. And I know she's been a real champion for trying to talk about the modeling, especially as it relates to, excuse me, ocean acidification.
Will do.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Krista, or Steve.
Yeah, thanks. So your typo in your slide here is fortuitous for
It is
us.
fortuitous, yeah.
Steve Blumenshine, Helen Fatanides, Fred Briones, and I are working on the development of an expert team that hopefully will draft a concept paper on post-fire effects on water quality. So we're making progress, and we've been meeting. We're looking at the experts that we would invite to this, and we will keep you updated. Thank you. Steve, did you want to add anything?
No, that's good coverage, Krista. Thank you.
Thank you both. Peter, anything from water supply?
No, I don't have anything to report this quarter.
Okay, thank you. Eric, anything from US EPA you want to elevate?
Just thought I'd mention to this group that there may be some interest in a EPA funding opportunity that's currently out right now. EPA is soliciting applications to fund support of trainings and workshops that support the goals of the Clean Water Act. So this includes monitoring activities, as well as other programs that support like the 319 program and 303D program. And there's several priority areas, including aquatic resource monitoring trainings, non-point source technical support for tribes, training workshops on recreational waters and beach monitoring, training workshops on fish monitoring and advisory programs, and also data management and data sharing training workshops for 303D, TMDLs, and water quality monitoring and assessment. So that call is out now. I think applications are due in about 2 or 3 weeks. I can post the link here, and people can take a look.
Thanks, Eric. Is that funding opportunity focused primarily for states and tribes, or is it more broad?
Both, yeah, states, tribes. I think there's some funding available for NGOs as well. But yeah, it looks like it's primarily focused on states and tribes.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, dropping a link would be helpful. Appreciate it. Let me just do one last check to see if Ray joined us. Great. Thanks, everybody. Great updates. Okay. So I have a few updates been working on. Most recent of which was I gave a presentation yesterday to the Southern California Water Dialogue, which is a group of water districts and NGOs that meet quarterly to talk about all things, mostly drinking water topics. I was connected with this group from Evelyn Wendell, who is our chair of the Safe to Drink work group. And we have been talking fairly frequently about the issues of open data and just providing an opportunity to elevate the council and the opportunities that lie within our web pages and our portals to provide information on things. In our case, we were talking mostly about drinking water information, like premise plumbing and stuff like that, and issues that can arise when folks talk about safe to drink and safe drinking water availability. So I gave a presentation yesterday at their quarterly meeting on two things: broadly open data and open science, and kind of the work that water boards has been doing as a kickoff. And then I focused a little bit more on a second presentation on the council itself, who we are, what we're tasked to do, how we interrelate with the AB 1755 Open and Transparent Water Data Act, and our kind of role in collecting and turning data into information to a wider audience. Excuse me. We had a really great discussion with that group, and I think I brought some situational awareness to that we are here, and hopefully we can. I've already made a connection with the Sierra Club from a contact down there that followed up from that meeting. So hopefully we get some increased engagement from that group. Sorry. Also, a little update on the My Water Quality web pages. All of the active work groups have submitted a version of a template to update. And this has been about an 18-month process, which isn't too unexpected because a lot of the people that are leading the work groups aren't state employees, they're volunteers, they're volunteering at a time just like yourselves. And so it's been a little bit difficult to find time to focus on updating the web pages. Plus the beta version of the web pages are behind our firewall, so it's a little bit difficult to kind of visualize the changes, and it takes a little bit of time to coordinate meetings with folks to see the changes they've updated. But that being said, there's a lot of great progress. The website looks great, and it's a vast improvement on usability and hopefully functionality. In fact, though, I think the DIT is hoping to leverage this effort to make a case for a wider overhaul of all the water board's web pages. In that vein, we're hoping to push these live on August 1st. So we're kind of making some last minute tweaks over the next month, and hopefully there'll be a big unveiling of those web pages. I imagine there'll be some tweaks as people actually get a real feel and can start clicking through and identify some issues or areas that may have not been completely populated, but that's okay. I think you're going to be really impressed with the new look and feel of the web pages. So something to look forward to in early August. Some other work I've been doing with the Racial Equity Data Subcommittee, and this is a new subcommittee under our Environmental Justice Roundtable at the water boards, where we've been really focusing on racial equity-based data analysis and projects, and working with our programs within the regions and the state water board who are undergoing these types of analyses to implement our racial equity action plan. We've been working to help lead this subcommittee for the water boards and helping to try to develop a best practices and guidance for utilizing demographics data and other data resources for these types of analysis, and overlaying those and joining those with our program data. So we've come a long way. We've been utilizing some coaches from DataMade, and we had a great webinar earlier this week on kind of an example of how to join census related data to some of our point data, like inspections data. And I went ahead and that was recorded, and that's available on our website, actually under the equity work group playlist. So if you're interested in checking that out, it's just a 1 hour kind of introduction to the topic from some experts that work out of Chicago. And we have a hope to continue working with those coaches and within programs over the next several years, but at least through the next fiscal year. The National Monitoring Conference that's happening next March, it's going to be in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'm the EPA Region 9 state member on that National Water Quality Monitoring Council. And I'm also helping with the program subcommittee for the conference. We just closed out on the session call for sessions or concurrent sessions for that conference, excuse me, which is really the main product of that national council. It's a 3 to 5 day conference where it brings in members across the nation and states to talk about water quality monitoring topics and issues and advancements and all sorts of things. So we're in the process of reviewing those sessions. Following that review, we'll put out a call for abstracts. So I'll be encouraging anybody that's within this group or within your contacts to submit abstracts that fall within the sessions. So far, I think there were 64 sessions that were submitted. And so now we're kind of looking at those and making sure none of them are sales pitches and that they are which topics can be combined, which are ripe or topical for the conference. So more to come on that, but that is going to happen next March in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I know Squirp usually attends, but it's a great conference to go to if you have a chance. And lastly, the Water Data Consortium. We've been looking for the CEO, Tara Moran, who's a great leader for the consortium over the last 3+ years, had to step down from the position for family reasons. And so they've been undertaking a CEO search. Greg was instrumental in helping to with the hiring process, or the interview process, I should say. I think they're close to hiring a CEO replacement. That should be coming soon. So as soon as the announcement is public, I'll be sharing that information. We had to skip the June meeting for the consortium, so it's been on hold while they kind of figure out the next CEO replacement. But there are some really cool projects that they're undertaking, one of which is like an urban supply data project that is underway that'll be I think really valuable once it gets to more completion. So that's a lot of good things coming out of the consortium. One thing that's also that's not on this list that I wanted to highlight within the OEMA side of updates is that we've been working with. We were able to secure a small amount of funds to help get the AB 1066 work moving, and so we're moving forward with amending a contract with Squirp to help kind of take on the first phase of what the legislation had tasked the council with doing related to priority inland recreation sites and monitoring. So hopefully we'll be starting that work in April of next year when that contract the renewal can be executed. So good things to come from there. We'll be looking to revamp our inland beach monitoring work group and leverage that with an advisory panel to help us kind of first define what the priority inland beach recreation site should be. And from there, we can kind of go on to phase 2 of once we have a defined site definition, what would it look like to design a monitoring program to look at those sites throughout California. And that's all I've got. Is there any questions on anything that I've reported on? Okay. Great. Well, if you think of anything, feel free to reach out. I'm always available to you all. And next we have Greg for item 4, if you're willing and able. I don't have any slides. You can share your screen. I can stop sharing.
Thank you, everyone. I am under the weather, so bear with me. I'm not my normal energetic Greg, but I'll do my best. I'm excited about this topic, though. It's something that definitely put a lot of thought in with Nick and Wynn and some other folks that I don't even remember how this came up, but it came up because of a need, obviously, that I think folks are sort of feeling this urgency to have more reflection on lessons learned. Bear with me while I get to my home slide. You're going to get a reverse preview. So we at the Water Boards, as you all know, have gone through a lot of open data work in the last 10 years, really. It's the topic that I pitched my application to the job on. And when I got the job, I was quickly immersed in how how to figure it out. And then the legislature in California mandated some stuff. So we have a history of this, but I also think that based on the conversations we've had, there's a lot of lessons learned. Open government is not dead by any means. And open data is really a strong facet to open government. And so what I'm going to do is sort of walk through a little bit of the history of open data movement and the open water data movement in California. And then I'm going to go through some of the work that we're doing, just sort of reflective in the spirit of what we want to see. The idea was, I think by Wynn's words or something like that, was like, let's talk about all the failures and let's talk about all the things that we've learned from those failures, because this is iterative work and it's going to be loaded. The path is loaded with what people would call failures, I think. So I'll do a little bit of modeling of that, and then I'll get into some examples of what I think are sort of inspirational and interesting topics that are emerging around open data. And then I'll end with a little pitch for the speaker series. And I don't know if I can go, I definitely don't think I can go an hour and 15 minutes on my slides alone, Nick. So I did ping Andrew to see if he could come a little early, but just
He's here,
FYI.
and no pressure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So the history of the open data movement was something that I have looked at a couple of times, but looked at it more closely for preparation. And I had no idea really that it started in the 40s. Apparently there was a movement then for sharing more open science data. And this was at the time when environmental research, so to speak, was really kicking off. And so there was a desire for, well, also a lot of physical and chemistry research and biological research was being done across the planet. And I think people realized that siloing of research and data was not good. And so there was this discussion in a paper that sort of started this idea. I would even add a bullet before then and a pitch for Alexander von Humboldt as being one of the first open data scientists that went around and collected soil data and then built isotherms around soil temperature for the whole planet of everywhere he went. So this goes back to the 1800s and early there was a lot of synthesis of academia back then. There was, it seems like when academia gets more holistic, these open movements really sort of take off. The term open data itself appeared in literature in 1995. This was, again, another group of environmental researchers that decided climate change was on their horizon and on their minds, and it's time to start thinking about and sharing our data more thoughtfully and intentionally. And so this helped frame a lot of the principles around not just go open, like open first, but to really think about how you structure your data and make it and describe it and make it more accessible to other folks. And in this case, it was researchers again. In 2007, the Sunlight Foundation, which is sort of this iconic open data group, I think they're IT researchers out of a think tank in Sebastopol. They wrote up a paper and a number of documents really, but one of the things that I looked at early on when I started this job was their guidance, their open data sort of handbook. And it really lays down a lot of interesting and important things that caught the attention of governments, not only in our country. You notice that I mentioned that Obama administration really took off on a lot of these ideas, but the European Union did too. And to this day, I would argue that the EU is doing a lot more with open data than the United States is. Also Australia, a lot of other countries. Canada is really innovative and advanced in their use of open data. So the Sunlight Foundation document sort of like spawned this larger government movement. In terms of California's history, our open data journey started with it began with a series of dialogues and on open data in California, open water data and value. And it was in those dialogues that I think some folks got the idea to sponsor legislation that would mandate open water data. Behind that drive for open water data and the AB 1755 was things like markets. Folks wanted to see more data available so that economies, Silicon Valley, folks like that could get involved in the market. But there was also a lot of desire to make it more transparent, data more transparent around really big, important decision-making processes. The open and transparent Water Data Act, I should note, preceded SGMA. And a lot of the desire of getting folks to be more open and sharing of their groundwater data was originally intended to land in the Open and Transparent Water Data Act, but they needed something more. Obviously, they needed some authorities for water rights on groundwater. So there's a relationship there. We're also facing a lot of concerns. The early part of the drought, the big drought, the most recent one, and folks were just, they wanted more transparency, which is fair. In response to that, our agency started working with the Department of Water Resources and developed a strategic plan for this Open and Transparent Water Data Act. It's actually a really useful and interesting document if you ever get a chance to look at it. Didn't put the link here, but somebody might drop the link. And after that, we started working on protocols for publishing, and the Water Board really looked inside of ourselves. We said, what do we need to do to open up our water data? And we chose the first step as to ask our board to adopt a resolution that's embraced these core principles around open data and openness. And that was done, and that's a really interesting as well resolution. I 7 years later, I don't know how useful it is today, but it still is an inspirational piece of writing to me, and it has a lot of good ideas in it. We actually have a plan to bring back to our board an update on the 2018 resolution. So that may happen in the next year. We're a little low on resources in OEMA right now. So the very first step is really unlocking the data, and like prime directive number one is like, get it out. Don't just sit and stew on it. Even if it has problems, just get it out. And so we started working on a lot of these data flows to do that. This is an old diagram. Some of you may have seen this, but this was a 2012, I think, version of the tuna can diagram of all the databases at the water boards. And it's an idealized, it's actually fascinating as a storytelling mechanism, but it's too busy to understand completely. But imagine all those little cans are enterprise applications on the lower part. And the upper part is more of an idealized, like, let's put them in topical areas so that surface water data is together and drinking water data is all together, et cetera. But it's actually, since then, since 2012, it's expanded. There's more crazy little cans down below. There's new clearinghouse and report managers and sort of these collector places. We're now moving towards an external cloud warehouse model too, which is not even on this diagram. But this really shows the complexity of an organization like ours and the challenge of producing open water data. We took a data lifecycle approach to our thinking and approach. And so this really means that, and it's called the data lifecycle because it is in some ways, but it's also stages. And so there's some data only comes in once and it's not a cycle, but really you need to think about the whole life cycle. And that means stage 0 is really, why are you collecting the data? What is the reason? Or is it a regulatory purpose? Is it monitoring to assess compliance, for example? Or is it a investigative question? You have management questions and you need answers. PFOA, PFAS would be an example. So what is the driver of that? And when you set up that driver, you need to be thoughtful about the whole life cycle as well. Like, who's going to use the data? How will they use it? Is it important to collect this stuff monthly? Is it okay to do end of year monthly only, or do you need it every month? So all those considerations go into that stage 0 assessment. So then the data gets stored, it goes into its little tuna can, and then it gets made accessible. And right now I would estimate we're making 5% maybe of our open data at the most. In our catalog of inventory options, we're making about 5% open. And finally, turning this into useful information, which is, I think, the shiny thing that everyone wants to see. A lot of managers and folks in the public, they get vertigo looking at too much data. They really just want to see something that turns it into information. But you can only do that if you sort of think about holistically this whole approach. And this whole approach is really what we now call data governance. So this is a most recent snapshot of the data.ca.gov. If you look under the organization of the California State Water Boards, we have 54 data sets. This is how I come up with my 5% estimate. And some of these are really, really used and valuable, and some of them are one-off things that went up and haven't been really maintained. And that's a whole nother thing that I'll talk about. Open data in the eyes of the statute and the early 2015 to 2020 era, open data meant just putting it here, do all the work you can to get it here. And then once you get it there, it's like field of dreams. People will come and use it. So we focused a lot on using our data ourselves too. So not only for decision-making around important key items like the needs assessment that Andrew talked about, but we have this other history at the water boards of doing performance reporting. So every year, and this has become more and more of an open data product. In the early years, it was like a once a year collect the data and publish it. And it has now become a open data fed, like 90% of the data that's on here is available as tabular data, and some of it is published as open data. And so, and it's granular too. So like it used to be that, for example, number of inspections was like 3 a number. And now you can not only see the 3, but where they were done, who did them, what the results of those inspections were. So this has become an open data product that we use. I don't think a lot of other people outside the water board appreciate it as much as those of us in, but that's okay. We actually do use this on a pretty robust basis. As I mentioned, inspections have gotten better and more deep and granular. And so we used this a lot during COVID to sort of plan for how to do inspections. We had to create new kinds of inspections to do things like camera remote inspections, but we've also been able to synthesize all these inspection flat files, as we call them, into a single report. So you can now see all the types, program types. Those little codes that are listed are things like NPDES wastewater, irrigated lands, Department of Defense sites, water quality certs. So you can filter and see them all together, which is actually really valuable and cool. We have now built a sort of an ancillary to this report that also shows inspections that were done and how long it took for the report to get loaded and made available to the public. And that is part of an internal drive that we want to have all of our inspection reports available for people within 90 days, I think is the mandate. And there are some exceptions for like big audits and things like that. But this new report, and I didn't screenshot it, but it basically shows that, which is really cool. Where's open data going? I think we reached a point in that around 2020, I would say, where it sort of stagnated. There was a lot of work to publish these things. It took a lot of work. We weren't sure if people were using it. We weren't sure if that was even the data that they wanted. Of the 5%, are we even getting the right stuff out there? And so we reflected on that, and we ran a workshop with some partners, and we learned some of these things. So these are experiential from us, but it's also a little bit of research I did. So like I said, originally it was a lot of manually curating of these data sets and pushing them out, making them available, letting people find them. And that was the Field of Dreams model. But we did some civic engagement. Many of you recall that we've done datathons and hackathons to talk about what could be possible with our data. And we got a lot of great feedback from that. I think there's a lot of ripe material still there in that community it's honestly, it's how government should be engaging in many ways, because we are in this technology data world now, and just expecting people to come and read a meeting and understand complex topics and testify on behalf of them that's not how they engage with their government. And we're seeing some of the ramifications of that, I think, across our country at least. And so I think more civic data engagement is good. But I also think that focused civic engagement is kind of where we're going with 2.0. We're also working on building multiple ways to interface with the data. And this came directly out of our work with Open Environmental Data Project. They are an organization, a little talk about or a slide about them later, but they do work with open data, environmental data beyond its original regulatory intent. So they're a nonprofit, and they work with data journalists, researchers, and governments and folks. And they convene and they do workshops, and they write documents that are actually really informative to people like me, because it opened my mind to how not just, of course, it was always known that it's interesting to put our data out because a journalist might write a interesting data story about it. But really thinking beyond that to say, well, what are the synthesis questions? You know, maybe we sit on one part of a question about flooding or something like that. And so working together across governments and understanding the importance of structuring the data, making machine readable, all that stuff is kind of what the Open Environmental Data Project has been helpful on. And out of that came this this workshop that we ran where we binned the groups into, we invited people to come and talk about drinking water data. It was literally some of the predecessory data that is in the needs assessment that Andrew talked about. And so it's like California's drinking water data, including violations, population, some of the water use data, some of the chemistry data, things like that. And we wanted to know what people out of that sort of realm of data, what would be the data sets that they want to see the most and how would they want to see them. And what we learned was that people want multiple things. And so some people want to have a good interface, but they also want to have transparency. And some people want just the raw data and give them an API and they're done. And other people want maybe something in between, like a relational model that's instead of having 16 flat files that have to be related to each other using these common identifiers, maybe you could build that relationship model and then deliver the data that way. And so that sort of opened some ideas in our heads of how we want to go. More on that in a minute. So we're also really focusing on modernizing our world, our technology stack at the Water Board. This is largely because we got a big $40 million project for water rights modernization. It probably wouldn't really be happening or happening as fast if we didn't do that. But there's also some projects out of the drinking water program that are doing similar efforts, not as well funded as Andrew would attest. But we're trying to leverage the work of all this to expand and to see a future of a different diagram than that tuna can diagram that I showed you. And this is actually working right now. We're in a interesting and exciting stage where the water data governance happening out of the water rights program is creating a moment for us to talk about data governance across a larger group. So I'll be able to report back on that hopefully soon. Yeah, so this, I think I put this slide in because I really wanted to talk about the consortium and this one project. And this grew out of this Open Environmental Data Project workshop where we realized that there's multiple types of interfaces that people want to have access to the same data, but don't make it different data either. Like have one authoritative source of data and then create multiple interfaces for people to get the data. And so I talked to Tara at the time, and there was an opportunity to kind of do some work with the urban water data subject. There was an urban water report streamlining working group that was happening at the consortium. And that's all about, if you go back to that life cycle, that's all about like the collection of the data, stage 2 or whatever it was, or 1. It's the front end of your system. And the streamlining that was sought by this group, which is valid, was because it's crazy. The state of California has literally got people reporting the same data, to the same agency sometimes in multiple places, but also across different agencies and departments. And so they were really focused on that front end. And not that it stalled, but it reached this point where they'd done a lot of work and insights and written a report, but it depended on state agencies and probably legislation, in my opinion, to start fixing some of these like crazy front ends. And so the opportunity arose because of really the conservation regs in my mind the first thing I thought was, let's put out the data that we have. Let's not worry about the front end right now, but as a water board and a state agency, let's take the responsibility to publish the data that we have, to think about it, curate it, structure it, and to really go through it and have conversations, which we have. We've spent a lot more time on this than I thought we would. But that's kind of what we're doing now. And I'd say more than halfway through, and we're going to have workshops coming up soon. And this is data that, so if you think about it, so it's data that would inform 2 use cases, drought and conservation. We have a drought team lead at Department of Water Resources, Julie Ekstrom, and we have a conservation team lead at the Water Board, which is Charlotte Ely. And they both have team members that are helping curate and make these data sets available. And the amount of time that we spend talking about things like how to structure monthly versus annual versus water year versus calendar year versus like, it's just really interesting. And it's the hard work. I know that people's sleep mechanisms kick in when some of that starts happening, but for people who understand the value of, like, somebody has to do that hard work. And if you just push the data out and don't do the hard work, the coders and the other people that are using the data have to figure that out. And it might result in less informed insights and stuff. So it's really exciting to me to see the hard work being done and the publications. Somewhere we have a list of them. I don't know where they all are. But here's a flow chart, sort of a diagram of what that project is about. We are going to basically take these broad categories of water data that are being put into our flows, our workflows. We are trying to figure out how to tie them all together. So we're being thoughtful. We even have a crosswalk table because there are some situations where different systems use different identifiers. And then lots of work on the data definitions and the metadata. And then this integration step is really that's the part that is on the horizon. And it's exciting to me because that is what I was talking about earlier, where we're going to basically, instead of just giving people access to 18 or 20 tables that can be related together, if they want to do the work, we're going to try to take a step and relate some of those tables together so that, and then serve it out of a technology center, so to speak, like a web hub that is optimized for delivering exactly what they want. So they hit this place with an API. I want Trilog's data for these 5 years. I'm only interested in these kinds of data elements. They would, in theory, be able to just go hit that and not have to download, gigabytes of data and thread it all together themselves and then get the Turlock data that they want. So this data integration step, it seems like it's like, oh yeah, cool, let's do the data integration thing. It's actually really innovative in my mind, because behind that, there'll still be the open data. People should still have access to all the other stuff. Stay tuned on that project. I didn't ask permission to share that image, but I think they'll be fine with it. And then Andrew, you'll be happy that I did include this. I'm very proud of the water boards for this work. This is an incredible amount of time and thinking, again, that has been put into data to turn it into contextual information that helps drive decision-making, not only for us, but it shares transparency with the people that we serve. And it allows us to be more equitable in our decisions and all sorts of things. And this is a really complex and cool dashboard with lots of different ways to filter and look at the data and download the data. It's very popular. It's used by public water systems. It's used by advocacy groups. It's used by researchers. It's used by the water board a lot. So I did want to talk about that. It's like, this is kind of the futures. And all this data is also available as open data. And so this is the future of the water board, and why I sort of showcased it is we want to have our big important decision-making things, synthesize the data, do the hard work internally, show the work, show the data, and then make it accessible to people, and maybe make it accessible in more than one way. So some other big ideas that came to mind when I was preparing for this is open data is also now becoming a really strong lever for artificial intelligence work. And there's so many new frameworks that are being built right now that are able to take sort of any kind of time series data, for example, and start building models and testing it and seeing if there's a way to inform important questions. There's also generational or generative AI that allows you to essentially fill in data in between gaps or outside of what you currently know. And while scary, that's also super exciting to me. We have a lot of potential in California because, for example, we do bioassessment monitoring in the swamp program, and we have a lot of really good reference conditions across the state. But we also have decided to never do reference conditions in some parts of the state because we just know that the water's hammered and we're just not going to get any valuable data for our valuable time and resources of going out in the field and collecting it. You could use some of these AI tools to start estimating what some of those conditions could be within the California landscape. There's also machine learning and computer vision types of projects. We've actually used some at the water board. There's a CannaVision product that is used by water rights to identify features associated with cannabis grows, like ponds and storage tanks. And there's some other shapes that they can sort of estimate what it might be. That's also a great example of something that I've always thought we should try with wetlands. We don't have any way to really calculate trends of wetlands lost or gained. And we've talked about doing something similar to this in the past with Eric Stein and folks, but we're now at a point where it's not hard. It's really, there's products out there that are doing this. So NASA's hosting a workshop. I don't know if it's open to anyone. I think it's invite, but you might look into it if you're interested. It's the first Science Understanding Through Data Science Conference, and it's at Pomona, I think, and at Caltech, if I got that right. And they are having one of our colleagues come and give a talk, Dan Wang at the Division of Drinking Water, in her free time, spare extra outside of work time, I think does a lot of work with folks on looking at open data and big data and AI models for climate. And she's got a couple of projects that she's worked with, for example, with UC Berkeley on using ChatGPT to understand the drinking water regs, but also this larger vision of sort of a common data world where all sorts of climate related names or questions could be asked, and you could start using open data to do this. And so the idea that we're not just producing open data sets that are specific to the use of a drinking water advocacy group, but maybe we're putting data out there that could be ingested into these larger models and used to answer like really urgent questions is also really exciting to me. This is the Open Environmental Data Project's website. I just snapshot of it so that people could see it. They have a lot of different resources on there. And this was the one that data governance. We actually have a page for the project that we did, and I can share that in the chat. So my proposal is that we embark on a speaker series related to this. I don't think my talk was inspirational maybe, but I think we could find speakers, and I think we can, I know people that would be interested to come and give us a talk about their experiences. And I think it's really important because behind all this is, maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not, but the premise is that the council is an incredibly unique and important feature in California government. We have a place where people sit and spend their time and think about water quality data and topics around that don't necessarily get the authority to make the decisions, but they are empowered in many ways to sort of help build and reinforce these feedback loops of data going to decision making. So I think the idea behind this speaker series was to really bring in some stories of, are there examples where maybe there's a similar public health council that advises on things and they've been using open data on opioids or something like that. Just anything that might be sort of like adjacent enough, but interesting enough to this group. And so those are the categories that we sort of thought of as other state agencies that might have this sort of feature, other federal groups. I have friends in DC that are still doing open data work they started in California. And so maybe like some of them can come and talk about some of the examples at the federal level. And then these public-private things are also really exciting. Early on, we made a lot of progress in our OEMA world because we partnered with folks, the West Big Data Innovation Hub in particular, but Code for America, and then Open Environmental Data Project. And so there's a lot of opportunity there as well. So the proposal from me as my sort of brief window as alternate co-chair of this group is that you guys embark on 3 to 4 speakers, commit to something like that over the next few meetings, and just, if it doesn't feed you, then you could stop it, obviously. But I think it might be really interesting, and it might inspire the council to think of ways to, I don't know, just hone in on what are the feedback loops, what are the things that we really want to make a difference on. So that's my pitch.
Thanks, Greg. I think it was inspiring, even if thank you for doing this. I know you're under the weather. I feel like I recognize those slides. Just some quick discussion prompts that I kind of dropped in the chat. I just kind of wanted to get the council members' pulse on a few things. How does the council see its role in open data and open science and in the larger open government? And then also, is the council interested in hearing additional talks. Why is it showing this? What do you, are you just hearing additional talks on this topic at future meetings? Is this the series? Is this inspiring you? Is it interest of you? Is it not? I mean, if it's not, that's an okay and honest answer. I'd rather do that than try to figure out something to that would bore you. So just a chance to talk openly about this stuff.
Nick, I'll help you get the conversation started with two ideas. The first is Greg emphasized that this is essentially an end-to-end process. It's not just dump your data into a database. I think a lot of the middle pieces, there are a lot of people working on already. I think the one that we have a little bit less of what people are working on and need a little bit more vision is on that last part, essentially how we turn those data into information. And I think that one of the things that I'm involved with, that I'm not alone in, is developing report cards as an example of kind of products that we want at the back end. I would think that's the kind of thing that the council could spend some time on, kind of talking about what are those back end products that are high priority. And I think that will help then the people at the middle ends kind of figure out what are they working towards. Because as we produce report cards, and Jen actually has the Ocean Science Trust working for them on developing a California specific report card. How do we build the data sets that flow? So once we've got the managers to sign off on this is the information we want, how do we make sure that essentially gets populated and somebody doesn't have to give me a big contract every year to reproduce it? It naturally flows. Second topic is Greg brought up AI, and AI is both a data, in a sense, tool and sometimes even a data generator. I think I'd love to see us have a discussion at one of our future meetings, have some speakers come in and talk about kind of where AI is affecting the water quality science.
Thanks, Steve. Great idea. Others in the council that have ideas or reactions or, oh, I see a hand. Sorry, Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nick, and Greg. Thank you for the presentation. I did find it inspiring, and I think there's a lot of wisdom from your years of experience built into this. I have one suggestion for a potential role the council could play in this, and I think there are barriers that exist to making this more widespread and having broader adoption of this. And the specific barriers I'm thinking about are and for the most part, the use cases are stormwater related, and when we as stormwater programs, we spend an awful lot of time, money, and effort not just collecting surface water quality data, stormwater discharge data, but preparing reports for that data. And we're doing that in a regulatory context. And I know that this council's role is not to set policy that affects those regulations, but when we're having conversations with regional water boards about streamlining that process of reporting, making that data more open, available, increasing transparency, allowing that data easier access for not just the regulator, but also the public and NGO community to be able to access that data, understand it, use it. A barrier that we often run up against is we're told often that the federal code or the federal code of regulations, the CFRs for stormwater, prevent us from fully making that transition, because at some point that report has to be in a PDF, in some type of PDF state somewhere on on a database, right? So we keep running into this barrier time and time again. I'm just wondering if, and I'm not suggesting that the council plays a role in changing that policy, those regulations, but I think that this council could play a role in helping develop ways so that if that code of federal regulation is going to remain in place and we have to live with it, that's fine. But there may be other ways around that where we can satisfy that, but still streamline this data reporting process so that the data is more open, more accessible, more easy to use for multiple purposes. So that would be one suggestion I have, and perhaps that could be the subject of discussion and maybe a speaker down the road. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I know that you're speaking of some specific examples related to the SMC, and I'd be interested to maybe learn more about what's going on with the consortium, the urban water data reporting project, because I think there's parallels there where if they're overcoming those barriers with the federal code of regulations, then there's probably maybe a pathway for doing that. I don't think Greg's able to speak to that directly, but if they're having workshops related to that, I think there's a way to learn from what their process is, and if they're overcoming it, then there should be a way for the stormwater folks to overcome it as well and provide kind of an example for doing that. I'm also, I mean, Eric's on the call. I'm not sure if Eric Dubinsky, I don't know if he's aware of if there's flexibility around that particular code of regulation. I know I hadn't heard about it until you pointed it out to me at a previous call about the need for it to be, I even forget what I said, but it was an interesting kind of language on what it was requiring and how that was a perceived barrier for the regions to ultimately streamline and make the data more available. So I don't think that maybe would be the intent of what the EPA is up to, but and there may be some flexibility, I'm not sure.
I mean, one reaction is it's possible that it could be both and. I don't know enough about it right now, but I do know a lot about it. And I think one of the barriers to both and, kind of meaning you have a PDF that is your static compliance report, but you also have the ability to structure common structured data so that your Orange County report data is comparable to someone else's data. And I think that's one of the barriers that we find with this work is that there's no motivation for the LA board and the Santa Ana board and the San Diego board necessarily. Well, those are bad examples because they do have common permits, but there's no real motivation to do that hard work of creating what would it look like to sort of extract out some of the important tables and make them comparable to each other. And so maybe the council could think about a working group that's mission was to sort of go find some low-hanging fruit regulatory data that could be like, figure out a way to do that work, like literally work with Code for America or someone and figure out ways to transform, because there's a lot of tools available now where you could scrape it out of a PDF and transform it into some new common structure, right? So I don't know, maybe that's an area if you think of a both and approach, but.
No, thank you. I mean, I think that's exactly what I had in mind, that a potential role the council could play, looking for those opportunities to, make this happen, help this transformation happen while not, while still satisfying whatever regulation we may be held to. So yeah, thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Grant. Any other council member feedback? I know I have some feedback from one of the work group co-chairs, but I want to give an opportunity for other council members, but her comments might spur additional discussion as well. So go ahead, Anna.
Hi, folks. Good morning. If you don't know me, I am the co-chair of the Safety Work Group, and I'm also OEMA's Open Data Science Equity and Tribal Coordinator. So Greg's talk is like my jam through and through. But as a co-chair, and
No, no, go.
Okay. As a co-chair, talking about open data, and I like to extend to open science, which is really what's more comprehensive of the entire data lifecycle. Doing that work, as Greg alluded to, is, puts people to sleep. It's not sexy. It can take a lot of time before you get to the cool, fun things like the dashboards and things like that that Greg showed off. How does the council see its role in filtering the talks and concepts that hopefully we're going to be hearing about through this speaker series to the work groups that do the work of the council, right? They're your muscles. And what resources can you provide to work groups to make that happen, so it's not just talk and we can actually operationalize and act on making our work groups open, transparent, and equitable? What's that look like for you?
Any thoughts from the council? Go ahead. I see Greg. He went off again.
I mean, Greg and I could just chat about this for days, I'm sure, but
I mean, there's a little bit of historical context. The council has tried multiple times to develop dashboards and informatics, and it does that in some ways, but I think it always runs up against the resource constraint, and it's less resource now than it was in the early days when there was at least a half PY coming from the department. So I don't know. I mean, and honestly, OEMA has been sort of like the little engine that could when it comes to trying to help. But I'm always going to try to do that. But I think there might be some strategic thinking that needs to happen around the council's mechanisms and availability of resources to sort of say, maybe it is contracting. I don't know. Maybe there's a point where the council could really just say, this is what we're going to do, and then have the resources to do it. Because otherwise it's always aspirational, and it runs into this resource problem.
Yeah, there's some interesting I think those are great questions, Anna. And a lot of times the council asks for the work groups to tell them what they can do, what they can do for the work groups. And this is a great example of the work groups asking that same question back. And it's kind of a difficult question, yeah, because of resource constraints. I do think there are some opportunities that the council does have some leverage. I know Greg spoke to the importance of what the conservation legislation had on the effort for the urban water data reporting tool, how that kind of pushed things over the hump a little bit to get things moving a little bit more rapidly. There could be an opportunity for some council members to advocate for follow-on legislation to AB 1755 that promotes further operationalizing open data and open science within use case driven areas that are collaborative, like the work groups, that could then lead to future resources. I know that the budget is a problem now, but that's not, it usually goes in kind of waves. So there will be money at some point again that could be then dedicated to help support those efforts, and maybe the council can help develop some sort of white paper recommendation that comes out of that is endorsed by the council, that can then be used to support legislative development. That's obviously beyond what we talked about this a little bit last time about who has certain abilities to engage and do this type of work, but that's one idea. Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, I just wanted to +1 everything and be clear, I am for this and doing what we can with the Safety at Work group to make our process more open. And I can give a talk on what that looks like. We're the very early stages, but I'm just thinking about the work groups that don't have dedicated water board staff pushing the work group forward. It's much more difficult for them to dedicate time because they're volunteering, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we support those folks to achieve these open goals? Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. And I think there are, I think that beyond the Safety at Work group, there are other examples. The trash work group, is headed by Wynn, who's a big open data advocate. I think that the CC Hab network, because they have some support from OEMA and in general, has really worked hard to make their data open, and now there's, I believe, FHAB data now that's published on the Open Data Portal, which was a big achievement. So there are examples of it happening, and I think there's a roadmap for some, and maybe a way to potentially synthesize that and then provide a mechanism for the council to support that work and maybe elevate that at the legislature. I know it's something that's Evelyn's been looking for, something like that, like something specific to bring to legislative context that she engages with, and I see she's on the call. So if there was maybe a written example that was endorsed by the council that she could take and elevate, that'd be one example of something that the council could do. Could also come out of the AB 1066 work, because it's going to be a newer project where the council's involved in, and just kind of with a equity lens, which is outlined in the legislation itself, like the importance of providing what we're doing in a transparent way and engaging with the communities that are impacted by the work that we're doing would be important, and could be something, an opportunity there as well. Any other comments before we move on to hearing from Andrew as kind of our first foray into an example? We decided to kind of start with a look internally, because Andrew works in OEMA and kind of can set some examples. I'm hearing from the chat and from the council members that did participate that this is of interest. So we'll look to potentially look for other speakers at Code for America and otherwise moving forward. All right, seeing no other hands, I'll go ahead and move on to Andrew, who I believe is on and can take control.
Yeah, I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen. Nope, that's not what I want to do. Oh, actually, that is what I want to do. Can you see my screen?
It's coming. Yes. Oh, now it's in. I can see PowerPoint now. In the program.
All right. Is it in the
It's like you have it open, like you're making edits to a slide.
Oh, perfect. Let me do it this way then.
Now it's one more.
It's coming. There we go. All right.
You got it.
All right. Well, I want to first off thanks Greg for starting this conversation, and obviously his leadership in this this area, and for the council for inviting me to talk. I think for the purpose of this talk, it's really looking at open data or open government on a use case scenario, really focusing in on the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program, or SWAMP, which OEMA, where most of the work is done. Okay, why is it not moving forward? Give me a second here. Is it oh, there we go. You see the next slide?
Yes.
All right. So, so I want to frame this talk, first of all, much like Greg did, is in saying that kind of open data and access to data is really an element of the data lifecycle. It's all of it. And there's feedback loops throughout the cycle. It's not just it's a process, right? It's cradle to grave, the life cycle of the data, and we have to think about that from our perspective as a program, and the importance of each step throughout before we get to the publication or sharing of that data, and giving access to that. So just to, like I said, this talk is really in reference to the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program, and how we focus on open data and access to the data that is produced through our programs. As you see listed, there's many programs or sub-programs under SWAMP: bioaccumulation, bioassessment, the toxicology and contaminants program, freshwater harmful algal bloom. And those are our major statewide programs that are under SWAMP. And we can't forget our Clean Water Team program as well, which is a citizen science group that they provide essential gap or data for that are areas of gaps or data gaps that we have at the state. So that's an important program that we sometimes fail to highlight under SWAMP, but it is part of that. And then also there's also important work at the regions that they do through SWAMP funding with that are related to some of the statewide programs, but at the regional level. Okay, so what's interesting about SWAMP, which it kind of has a dual purpose in the sense that yes, we collect data that's essential to the objectives and management questions of these programs, but we also know that that data is used for other purposes. And one of those primary uses is the integrated report. So it is used for listing or delisting of water bodies across the state. So we have to think of our programs as not just collecting data for our needs, but also for others' needs. And that kind of opens up the conversations for open data and access and all of that. And so we really play a role within SWAMP as data stewards. And so that's really an important kind of mindset that we have within the program. And to do this, we also have within our data that comes through, it plays the way that we can make it accessible is because of the important interconnections with the seed and data ecosystem. And so our main driver, I would say, of the open data is compliance with the open data resolution that was in 2018. So that stresses the importance of transparency and access to data, but also, like I said, because we know that others are using this data, it's already kind of a built-in mindset to our programs. As we go on to this topic, there will be two main pillars that I'll talk about, data quality and data use. That really helps frame what we do within the program and how we have established these open data pathways. And so just, you'll see that coming through in the, oh, why does this keep on doing this? Anyway, so this is a somewhat busy diagram, but it's really important to frame the talk in that, and much like I said, it is the data lifecycle. This is another representation of that in more of a diagram level. But there are two areas I really want to focus on. One is project planning. That is essential to our open data lifecycle in the sense that you have to have write-ups, kickoff meetings, development of your quality objectives. You need to have management questions developed. Most often there's a project plan or program plan that's developed that really feeds into the entire process. And really this is a diagram of our quality management system within SWAMP. And so that's an essential part of that is that planning phase and making sure that that is done prior to those conversations of where is this open, where does data going, where, who's going to access it. That's an essential driver to that conversation. And then the other aspect of it is data verification down here, which is a little bit further down the road, which is making sure that we're assessing the data, we're evaluating its quality, its usefulness, and that it's complete. And so all of these steps across the way are essential path or steps for the open data process. I will say that, let me say this. There we go. Nope, wrong direction. There we go. That's not the end result of the data. That's not where it stops, is at the SWAMP database. And that's what really has been our goal with SWAMP for the last several years now, is to not just have it end in the SWAMP database. It needs to go further so that people can access it and have different interfaces with that data. So this is a diagram of the seed-in kind of environment. It's a little busy. I don't want you to focus too much on it because this is, there's a lot going on here. But really the end result that we really focus on is the access and visualization of the data. And like Greg talked about earlier, is that we don't want it to just be, we're going to dump it somewhere so people can access it. That's not the only avenue that we want people to interface with this data. We also want them to be able to query it out in different ways, display it or visualize it in the way that they want. And so we have created different mechanisms to interface with that data through this seed and data ecosystem. Okay, so there's three that I'm going to mention and go through. I'll start with the seed and query tool. So this is one way that you can access the swamp data and other data that goes through the seed and ecosystem. This has been upgraded very recently, and so we at not only this within Swamp with some of our Swamp IQ team, but also some of our other OEMA team members that help on data modernization. They've helped, let's say, refine these queries of how you can access that data and search it and filter it. So in the past, this tool has been less than reliable, and we understood that that was a downfall for accessing the data. So in recent days, or months, I should say, we've upgraded this with the help of our DIT department at the water boards, and they have enhanced it so that the queries that are used to filter it that are more refined, the speed at which you can access the data or download the data has improved quite a bit. So this is an ongoing effort where we're trying to enhance the experience for those that are trying to grab data from this avenue. Greg also mentioned the open data portal. This is just the search. He showed the greater water boards. I just did the search of water boards and surface water data. So we have 21 data sets found. That's again the mostly the swamp data that is up here in flat files. So this is for you to just grab the data and then you can do the transformations, the filtering, querying based on that data. So this is like a more simplistic way to access the data, but it is important to get it out there nonetheless. And then lastly, we have a swamp data dashboard, which is kind of what Greg talked about as being kind of the next iteration or next generation of open data is being able to have users go in and view the data that they want to view and querying it on a dashboard, on a map, and make sure that it's the data set that they want, and then they can access and download it from those filtering tools. So this is an interactive tool. It compiles multiple data sets, including chemistry, toxicity, and tissue data. However, its target right now is just swamp data. Eventually, the vision is to have something similar or expand this to have all seed and data, but that's not currently what is in this dashboard. It's refreshed weekly, so it's current data, which is important. You can view it by state, region, or site level. So there's different scopes at which you can view this data. You can view it by program, region, analyte, or species. There's different graphing capabilities that are associated with this dashboard. And there's various overlaying maps that help you kind of associate the data to maybe some of your requirements, like in your basin plan or whether or not it'll be used in integrated port. Here's the link to the dashboard, and I'm not going to try to bring it up. I was going to demo it, but it takes too much time. So instead, I'm just going to do some stills of it. This is what it looks like, just with no filters. You can go over, as you see, it's just the map. And then you can go to the left and filter based on program, region, site, analyte, and so forth. This is an example of what would come up if you looked for, in this case, nitrate. So you can do it by simple analyte filter. You can actually go to a site and find out what details are or what data is available for that site, which is a really cool feature. You can also graphically look at the details of the site. In this case, this is survival for toxicity data. And so there's various ways that you can visualize and use this data through this dashboard. There's another one where you can actually compare multiple sites and see how they look graphically. At the bottom left, that's what it would look like on a graph using multiple sites. It's a little difficult to see because it's the same color, but it's, you know, circle, triangle, and square. So you can see that there's various ways that you can visualize and work with this data. And I will say that one, this is the masterful work of one of our data scientists, Michelle Tang, and she has done an amazing job of working with our swamp roundtable and our swamp coordinators and finding out what they want out of this dashboard and how they want to use it. So this is available to public and you can use this, but it's also been very useful to our programs as well within Swamp and externally. So this is an ongoing iterative process. It's always moving forward. And so we always like to get feedback on what should or should not go into these dashboards. All right, so that's just like an overview of what we're currently doing within Swamp as far as having that data available and open and accessible. But, you know, when we do this, you know, we have to kind of take a step back and reflect. And one of the things that when we have those conversations about open data is that we have to have confidence in the data that's being released. And that's an important aspect of it from our sense. In Swamp, we have ownership and accountability to that data. And so we have to have confidence that the data that we're providing is accurate, it's not biased, it has the right sensitivity, that it's complete, it has all the metadata necessary to use that data. And so that kind of made us evaluate that that there is different parts of the data lifecycle that can be refined or actually enhanced to better this open data experience for all. So we're still, despite all the efforts that we've done with intensive verification and resource intensive verification and validation processes or efforts to try to correct data, which in some cases becomes very hard. If it's seed-in data, we have to go to the regional data centers and ask them to correct it, and then it will be updated. If it's swamp data, we can do that internally, but it takes a lot of time and energy to see if that to go through that effort. And despite all of that effort, we're still seeing that there are data with unknown quality or quality concerns. There's lack of information or supporting metadata for data use in some instances, and even there's nonsensical values. And I'll go into that a little bit, what nonsensical values mean. But essentially, there's still concerns about the data that we're publishing and giving access to. And so we want to refine those processes and we want to modernize those processes. And so one of the things that we are currently undertaking is modernizing the data intake. And so we're going to focusing on that. What we're doing when we modernize it is focusing on data quality and data use. And so those have been the drivers of our new effort, or current effort, I should say, of modernizing our seed-in data ecosystem. We're calling this seed-in 2.0. I don't know if that's going to stick, but that's what we're going to call it for now. And really what that is a modernization of the entire seed-in data ecosystem. We're revamping the data workflows and the automations, and their data is going to end up in a cloud-based data repository. Right now, we're starting with the chemistry and field modules. So in the seed-in environment, in the swamp environment, we have multiple data types that we handle, that we deal with. And so those are not going to be our current our effort right now. We're starting with chemistry, one, because it's one of the larger data sets that we manage through swamp and seed-in data environments. And also it's the most intensive as far as the quality assurance needs. And so our ultimate goal is to have all surface water chemistry go through the CEDN 2.0 environment. So what do these monetization efforts look like? Like I said before, it's designed with focus on data quality and data use. So these are just some of the enhancements that we're looking at, or some of the features that we've put in place for this new environment. So the first one is, and the most important one, is an upfront data quality checker. And what it has is informative errors and warning messages that are associated with the data. So it will tell the data user or data submitter, hey, there's some issues with your data, and here's exactly what's wrong with it. This needs to be revised before you can submit your data. Or if it's a warning message, in some cases it's, hey, just to give you a heads up, we're missing some data here and it may not be used. And therefore, that's just giving them that information. It also incorporates both data user, or data submitter, I should say, that's an error, data submitter, and system applied qualifiers. This is a key element and change from our current process. Right now, it's only the data submitter that provides those qualifiers, and sometimes there's not qualifiers when there should be. And so there's this gap in information about the level of quality that is associated with the data that comes through. And that is an important part of our transparency model, is to have that qualifier and that associated quality metric or information applied to the data before that it gets used or published or released. There's also more robust format checks associated with it. It eliminates nonsensical or incomplete data. There's completeness checks associated with it, which identifies gaps in important or critical QC data. So if you don't have the associated matrix spikes or blank spikes or duplicate data that's associated with it, it will identify that through the system, and it will carry through the data lifecycle. The other important aspect of it was to really focus on the user experience. And so we're hoping that there's, at least in our mind, we think that the user experience is going to be way better because we have put a focus on the user interface. Okay, the other thing which is somewhat I won't say controversial, but let's say it's a different mindset. It's a shift in how we look at these data ecosystems. And so we really consider CEDN a data exchange environment, and where we can again access this data, we can have it published and used, and not a project management environment. So what we're saying there is it's not just getting into the environment, but it's also having it accessible and made available. And so it's really this data exchange aspect, where in the past it was really focused on project management, where even if your data was nonsensical or it was incomplete or it didn't have the necessary elements to get into to use the data, it still gets in. And therefore it's more of like, it is in there and I just needed to get it in there. And that was my priority, was to get it into the environment. And that's really a shift that we're moving away from. And so we have a different handling of those incomplete and unusable data, is it just won't go into the CEDN. And any project management that we have to handle with say there's samples that were spilled, or there was somebody triple spiked it and there was an error that was nonsensical data, we don't necessarily need that in here, because we're not going to use it and we're not going to share it. It's not going to be publicly available. So why do we need to have that submit in there? So it's somewhat of a shift in that mindset. And so that is something that we are hoping to convince our data users is the new paradigm. Okay. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Let me see if I can do this way. I'm going to try to give a demo, because I think talking about it is one thing, but showing you might be a little bit And I thought I had this open, so I apologize. Hope I can do this right. Don't tell anyone my password. All right. So I'm actually going to go to the main menu just to show it to you. There's this is the, when you first enter, it's a lot of instructions. There's a lot of helpful links. There's a lot of guidance on how to utilize this interface, but that is not the really important part of this, but just letting you know that we are focusing on that user experience. And I'm going to show you some examples of what this data checker up front will look like and what are the feedback kind of loop that comes along with this. Let me see which one I wanted to start with. Let's do. Okay. So like I said before, there's different types of checks. There's definitely formatting checks that are very simple and it's not very how do you say it? It's what we currently do too. We have a format checker that's associated with seeding, and we have it that's associated with swamp. It really makes sure that the controlled vocabulary, you're using the controlled vocabulary, that there's business rules associated with each field. All those are still in place, but they're a little bit more robust in the fact that one, through the user interface, it will identify which cell, which field the error is occurring, and you can just hover on it and it will tell you what the message is. In this case, the data can't be before the sample date. And again, this is an element of trying to get nonsensical data out of this environment. So in this case, this is a preservation date that was done prior to when the sample was actually collected. So that doesn't make sense. And therefore we'd want to correct that and not let that go through. So these would be errors, and you can come down to the error widget and it will say, your date can't be before the sample date unless you're using this default kind of date, which essentially means you don't know what it is. So those are just examples of kind of formatting checks. I'm gonna go through a couple examples here because I think it's important to kind of show the gamut of what we have developed. Here is an example of say a sample that or some data that may have warnings but don't have errors, which means warnings they can go through and you can submit, and but there'll still be some sort of qualifier that's associated with the data. Let me go through this, and this is probably going to be faster. It's only the test environment, so it's a little slower. But here's it's still thinking. Uh-oh. That's what I did. Sorry. I didn't clear the database. Yes. Let me try that again. Oh, that's the custom error log. That's no wonder. That's why. Error-free batch. That's why. So these are instances where if your data is submitted, you have no errors, you are going to get a message that says, hey, congratulations, there's no errors, you can proceed with upload of the data. There is a upload button to the right here, an icon that will then, if there's errors, it'll be grayed out. If it's available, it will be open and available to upload. So you can see these are all warnings. I'll actually highlight all of them. These are all warnings. So that means there is no issue with this data to be submitted, but just to let you know, there might be some qualifiers that are associated with it. In this case, there's some QC samples missing, the way that it's set up. This batch required a field duplicate, but they didn't include it. So that will be informative to the data user at the tail end of the use of this data or the cycle of this data. So these are the messages that we are trying to, and this one needs to be corrected a little bit, but This is another example where the recovery was outside of the acceptance criteria, and therefore it's a warning. It'll be qualified, but you can still submit the data. Let me go on to another quick example to show you some of the other cool features and functionalities of this. If we go to, let's see, the RPD warnings. So for instance, this system also calculates your percent recoveries. It calculates your RPDs, your relative percent difference. And so if your calculation or what you're providing is not what is calculated, then there will be an error, and it'll say that's not correct. You need to fix that. And so what we're seeing in our current data is that either the here's the error, the relative percent difference, the variance between the reported and the calculated is off, and therefore you can't submit this data. What we're seeing is that RPD data is either inaccurate or it's not actually being submitted, which again is something that helps inform the quality of the data, and therefore we need to have as part of these submittals. And so these are examples of the functionality of the system to help kind of clean up the data and make sure that the data that's being submitted into these environments and eventually goes out to the open data portal is of high quality and is better use. Okay, I'm gonna get out of here and go back to the slides. Oh, no, not from current slide. There we go. All right. So what do we see as the benefits of this new modernization? One, first and foremost, it's informative to the data submitters. We wanted an environment that provides real-time feedback on data quality and formatting issues. We see that if there are issues that are occurring regularly, it's a feedback loop to our community, our data submitters, and this could instigate like corrective action processes, or maybe in the instance with the RPD, they're not calculating it correctly because in their data system they have the wrong formula. Those are areas that we are looking to enhance or improve those feedback loops to our data submitters. There's also an element that we're working on where it will be informative of whether or not that data will be used for the integrated report. As I stated earlier, the integrated report program, they're one of our primary users and one of our, I guess we consider them clients. And they're looking to have a better experience for the data submitters, where they know whether or not that data will be used or not used in the integrated report to determine listing or delistings. It's also going to build some efficiencies. All of that upfront data checking of verifying, validating data, and potentially correcting data, all that resource allocations that we have currently for those processes, those are going to be minimized. It doesn't mean they go away. We're still going to have validation processes, but it's definitely going to reduce the amount of time dedicated towards that. And so we'll be building some efficiencies so those staffs can be used for probably more of a customer service centric type role within the data lifecycle. So whether or not it's the data to helping move the data to the open data portal, or building those dashboards or enhancing those dashboards that we've created. It's also just more confidence in the data that's being published, that's going out to the open data portals, or that are being used in these dashboards and filtered through in these query tools. And then there's more transparency about data quality and potential limitation of data use. So the goal of the CDIN 2.0 is not to completely restrict data from getting into the environment, but it does eliminate those nonsensical values. It does eliminate some of the data that has no use because it doesn't have the important metadata. But when it does get in, it will inform you about that data quality and whether or not there's any limitations to that data, whether or not it's minimal QC samples or data that's associated with it, or it just doesn't have the appropriate like dates and associated with the data. All right, I'm going to quickly go through some of the challenges with this modernization effort. It started as a proof of concept with a vendor. We're well beyond that at this point. But because it was a proof of concept, they didn't really have the core competency to build this out, and that it required a vast amount of customization. They kept on pushing, which is Earthsoft, some of their out-of-the-box processes, but that didn't meet our proof of concept in the get-go. So they've had to work with us to understand what the vision was for this Seed 2.0 environment. And there's a lot of enhancements to existing functionality. So some of their core functions that were part of their products, they worked fine, but they just weren't at the level that we wanted. And so we enhanced some of those, and those have been used in their future upgrades. One of the major challenges that we faced is that their out-of-the-box products is based on data submitter identification of the data relationships. So we didn't want that. We wanted the system to be able to identify it based on the data itself. So parent sample relationships, a matrix spike to the parent environmental sample, the lab duplicate to its parent sample, those types of relationships in their product, data submitter would say, this is my parent sample. And that was just too much burden to put on data submitters. So we wanted the system to identify it, which was a little bit of a hurdle to overcome, but we made it. Quality control calculations and verifications by sample type. So there was miscalculations and formulas that they had, and identifying which QC types need specific quality control calculations. That is all something that we wanted the system to identify, not started by the data submitter. So ultimately, we just didn't want any reliance on a data submitter to have to trigger these checks. We wanted the system to trigger it automatically based on the data that was submitted. A lot of time and energy and resources are going to be, it is dedicated and was dedicated and will be dedicated, because it's an ongoing process, to building out these acceptance criteria for these checks. It's all based on the method that is submitted, the analytes that are being submitted as far as the data. So this is relative percent difference, percent recovery, holding times, all of those quality checks and acceptance criteria. We need to establish that for every single type of data that we receive through this environment. And it's just a very resource intensive process. So that's going to be an ongoing process. And then also refining the controlled vocabulary was also a big and huge undertaking, because in our current, we moved over and migrated the current vocabulary that's in CDIN right now, but that vocabulary did not, it hadn't been reviewed in a long time. So there's a lot that we needed to cull. There was a lot that was not, didn't make sense. So we needed to remove those control vocabulary. We needed to standardize them and have some sort of nomenclature for these methods and analytes that are consistent and standardized. And so that took a lot of effort, and it's still going to be an ongoing process. All right, so what does this mean? Where are we now? And what does this mean as far as the open data kind of concept? First off, we're nowhere near launching this. So this isn't something that we are going to plug in just yet. Nowhere near is probably a stretch. We're pretty close. We're on the verge. Right now, we're in the midst of a version upgrade. which is a pretty big undertaking because of all the customizations that we have within our process. So this is our first version upgrade that we're going through, and because of the customizations, we need to make sure that they're still active and functional when we do go through that upgrade. And so that's going to be a process that we're undergoing right now, and we'll probably go on until August. We have a soft launch, which essentially means we're going to have one power user, which is our contract laboratory, to test it out, make sure it's still fine in a test environment, and then we're going to launch it into the production environment if they pass that, but only for the contract lab. That's probably going to be about 3 to 4 months for them to do that. And then we are going to begin conversations with our regional data centers. These are our bulk upload or centers that have a lot of data that they bulk upload on regular occurrences. We need to establish API connections with this new environment for them to upload their data into it or connect to it and automate that process. The concern is that they too will need to go through this upfront data checker, and how we manage that and how we make those connections is still a debate. So that's an ongoing concern. We have an implementation plan in place that we will be discussing with our seed-in user groups, and those will be coming soon. And this is really at what point do we do the final launch or the full launch or full release, and what does that mean with our current seed-in and swamp environments? Our full release is expected sometime in early 2025. Okay, I'll stop there and say, are there any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Very detailed presentation. There are a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know if they want to come off chat. I see Abigail has a comment as well as
yeah, I
Go ahead.
can go. Hi, this is really exciting. I think some of the features you're highlighting sound amazing, like being able to tell what data is used for 303D listing and things. I had a quick question about excluding the unusable or nonsensical data. For a lot of our MS4 permits, we're required to submit all of our data into seed-in. So if like a lab error happens or one of our measurement quality objectives is not met between the primary and the duplicate, and it sounds like that would then be excluded, but does that have compliance implications for us regulated community? And I just wondered if that had been talked about at all.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I may not have made this clear, and I apologize if it wasn't completely clear. So the acceptance criteria, those measurement quality objectives that you talked about, those are established through the system. And when you submit the data, it will compare those against it and say, did you meet those or did you not? And then if they don't, they will be flagged, qualified, but they'll still be allowed to go through. You'll have that qualifier. When we say nonsensical, it would be things like your matrix spike or your lab duplicate or your blank spikes. They're so or blank contamination. They're so far off that you're actually questioning the analysis. If the analysis is not even a quality analysis, which means there was some fundamental problem with the actual method, how they ran it, and the process itself, you don't want that data, even if it's for compliance or not. That's something that we would not want. And so those are things like matrix spikes that are 1,000% or something like that, or something that's so far out of the extreme that it's not data that's even usable for compliance, nor should it be used for compliance. They would have to instigate, and Christine's online, those would be great. Those are the type of things where the laboratory shouldn't even be submitting those data. And Christine would notice that their quality management system should be like, oh, we shouldn't even release this data. And so that's what we're safeguarding against, is really these extreme values where the data don't even make sense. And then other things of nonsensical data that we won't allow are things like, and I had an example, but I won't show, it didn't show up as I thought we were going to run late about time. But things like if I have a method, let's say EPA 200.8, it's a metals method, and that should be used for metals. But you have something that says I use EPA 200.8 for some volatile organic analysis. Well, that doesn't make sense. Those are not compatible information, and therefore we won't allow it in. So that's the type of nonsensical values that we're talking about. It's not like, oh, you missed your matrix spike and it's outside of the acceptance criteria, and we're going to reject it right out. It will still allow that type of data in, and it will just qualify it and say that exceeded the acceptance criteria.
Thank you so much for that clarification. I did not understand that properly. That makes total sense.
Yeah. But it's to the point is what we're trying to establish with this new modernization process is that that information is carried through the data lifecycle with the data all the way up into the open data portal, all the way up into the dashboards or query tools. Is we'll know that that data, when we look at it, there is associated limitations or some sort of quality concerns that people should be aware of and that they should be notified of.
Thanks, Andrew. Rebecca, I see your hand up. Oh, okay. Rebecca might be away, or she might be on mute. I can't tell.
Sorry, I actually work with Rebecca, and she's
Okay.
having some technical difficulties, and I guess it's not wanting her to unmute right now. Apologies.
Okay, no worries. Maybe she'll figure it out. There's also a comment in the meantime from Amanda Rosenblum at the Region 4 office, the water board. Amanda, did you want to verbally speak, or do you want me to read? Well, anyway, she asked that. She said that it'd be great if there was a way to identify and separate ambient water from effluent or groundwater samples and see that there is sometimes difficulty in the integrated report and for the public to notice the difference between surface water samples versus non-ambient water samples.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've really enhanced our matrix types that are in there that are identified. So we've teased out some of those to identify surface water, ambient surface water versus effluent, stormwater, soil versus sediment. So we've enhanced those out to, I think there's also gray water now. So there's recycled water. We've differentiated it quite a bit now so that there is a better way to filter out that data that is not required or necessary for integrated report.
Awesome.
Nick, I got it to work now. Thank you for giving me permissions to unmute.
No, I just asked you to. Yeah, good. Okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
So I just wanted to inquire if I was looking at your schedule, you're trying to push through and then have a final release fully in 2025, which is really ambitious, and I appreciate that. I was wondering, in terms of the technical group that's helping support this, if you need volunteer like beta site testers or anything like that, because honestly, we have a lot of we learn things as users, hiccups and things that happen along the way, and we've all experienced something in CDN. So if you are looking for that, I mean, Riverside would be helpful, happy to support if you needed a couple people to kind of play in the system, or anyone else. If you want us to communicate that to any of our broader groups, that would be helpful too.
Yeah, please, you know what? That's great. Thank you so much. Could you please reach out to myself and Tessa Foja and just say that, we would love to help out when we're at that point, because we have a seed and user group that we definitely want to engage with during this transition, but not all of them will be engaged in some of the beta testing, and we want to expand beyond our we have in our implementation plan either we haven't quite dialed it in yet, but we're either gonna do kind of an additional power user, kind of the contract laboratory will be doing beta testing, and then we would kind of slowly add a couple of more beta testers before we do that greater launch. Or what we could do is just have like like a user group that's defined that will be our next phase of user testing. And so we haven't really dialed that in yet, but that will be within the seed-in user group paradigm and when we schedule meetings with them. So if you can reach out, we'll make sure that we get you on board and identify you as a potential help.
Sure, I think that's great. I appreciate that. And I also know, I don't know if you're going to put, if you're looking for just feedback too from the broader community of users, because sometimes when we have headaches in using it, we only have like one or two contacts that we interact with on the receiving end. And sometimes we talk amongst ourselves, and it just, if we can give you feedback on things in the past that have been little headaches for us, I think it'd be great to tell you in the process now, because I think it would just help it move forward successfully.
Yeah, that was what the seed and user group was, but that's absolutely, if you have anything that we can reach out to you individually and get that feedback to make sure that it's incorporated in our efforts. There's also an element of, and this is with any kind of product release, is we're going to have an iterative process. So we're having what will be the like full release of this first iteration of it, but we're going to learn a lot from it. And we have, through our contract with this vendor, ongoing resources and money towards like advancing and upgrading this chemistry module, as well as attacking the next data types. So we can also incorporate feedback at a later date. It doesn't mean that once we release it, it's done. It's going to be iterative across.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Grant?
Yeah, thank you, Nick, and thank you very much for the presentation, Andrew. This is welcome news for the regulated stormwater community. You've already heard from some of our MS4 program representatives that did this. I would say the workflow of getting data that is collected, required by MS4 permits to be collected, and as I think someone noted, a lot of those MS4 permits now require dischargers to upload that data into seed. And so this is a heavy lift for stormwater programs across the state. And I think the transition to seed 2.0 is going to be a very welcome transition. And I would echo Rebecca and Abigail's sentiments that we are here to help support the OEMA team in this transition, and however that is most helpful, whether it's through participation in user groups or one-off conversations. We're happy to support that. So I would even volunteer to help provide lists of contacts at various MS4 programs who could be useful during this process for you, Andrew. And I did have one question for you. It sounds like there will be, it sounds like you're working on the ability for the data centers to upload bulk data via API. Is that something that potentially would be possible for other seed-in users at some point? Like, for example, for an MS4 program to have the ability to connect with seed-in via API to set up a more streamlined way of uploading data from their own databases into seed-in. And thank you for the presentation.
That's a good question, and I don't know if we've explored that yet, which would be essentially proliferating these API connections to various entities like that. I'm gonna just probably say that it would take a lot of discussion before we move forward with that. But I will say this, the intention with the regional data centers is that they upload a lot of data, like thousands and thousands and thousands of rows of data on a weekly basis, and that doesn't fit with the current interface that I just demonstrated that now. The system that we have is really user friendly right now, and it has a pretty broad or pretty large capacity to take on data. So I think it's 500 or 1,000 rows. So as long as you can get it to an EDD format, it's really kind of pretty easy and to do and upload. And it even provides you like email notifications and everything. Now I didn't go into that side of it, but there's error reports if you want to generate that way. I know you're looking for a more automated process, but really what we're worried about is resources and bandwidth to do that for a lot of entities, unless they're somewhat of the bulk upload and regular data managers. Those regional data centers are big data managers. And so, but not to say that's not possible. So, I don't want to say no, but just say we can venture and discuss that with our vendors, see what's likely and possible.
Fair enough. Yeah. Thank you, Andrew.
Eric Dubinsky.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. It's great to see all the tools that are coming online here. And I'm wondering, where's CEDN at these days with interfacing with the National Water Quality Monitoring Portal, getting data transferred up to the national database. I know it's something that's been worked on in the past, but just,
I knew you were going to call. I knew someone was going to bring this up. I knew it.
Well, it's got to be me, right? So.
Yeah. So, okay, there's two fronts on this right now. We have some, and Greg might be able to inform a little bit better on this if he's remembers the individual's name. But we are working on those relationships now with the current CEDN. The good thing is with CEDN 2.0, those pathways have already been, and those automatic like uploads and transfers into WQX has been, our vendor or soft already has those pathways built. They've already done it before. So it's a pretty seamless process, at least from what they describe it to us to do in the future. And that is those are the two areas that we're thinking about outside of getting data in is getting data out, which is having it transferred. So we have one internal bin or database that we need to get it into, and then also WQX. So those are two pathways that we are committed to having developed within 2025. Currently with CEDN, I know there's been some roadblocks about that of late, but I thought we had some connections and we were looking into reinvigorating those discussions with the current CEDN environment. Greg, do you remember what that was? Who that individual was? May not remember. Not there. So, I mean, in essence,
Andrew,
mine.
Are you talking about when we met with Adam?
Yes, Adam. Right.
Yeah. We spoke with Adam Griggs. I met him at the USCPA tribal conference, and we had a conversation about the challenges. And I think where we landed was resource limitations, but we'll get to it when we get to it. That's what I recall from that.
So it's on our mind, Eric, for current CEDN, but for CEDN 2.0 is definitely a plan of our implementation plan, part of our implementation plan.
Great. Yeah, and just just for awareness, because I don't think it's been widely advertised, that through How's My Waterway now, it has the ability to pull data out of CEDN and display it in a similar way to what you've worked on for like the Swamp Data Dashboard and put that together with assessments. that are done in integrated reports, and then link those actual reports, through searchable and graphical tools. So, if you're not aware, you might want to check that out too, because I think that's really complementary to some of the stuff you've done here.
Yeah, thank you. Will do.
Xiaoping?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. So yeah, I think Andrew's presentation is super interesting. We've been working on seeding submittals and struggled with it from time to time as well. So it's encouraging to see the upcoming improvement. Grant, Abigail, and Rebecca made good points, so I don't repeat, but I just want to bring up one issue that Andrew mentioned, that it looks like a QA check and sorting out some of the nonsensical data. On our end, we've seen some nonsensical data that are actually embedded deep, that not easy to find. Things like dissolved metal higher than total metal, or E. coli higher than total coliform, things like this. So I'm curious, the QA check that Seedon has, whether we could actually do the check on our end so that this type of data can be caught on our end, so that the submitted data has less issue. So I probably will reach out, offline to Andrew and see if this sort of QA check criteria, so that we could implement on our end. Also, I want to say, I, as a co-chair of the Cascade Water Monitoring and Science Subcommittee, we usually talk about scientific and monitoring issues, but not a whole lot of chat on the data. So I think this talk is super interesting. Probably I'll invite Andrew to talk on our subcommittee as well in the future. Thanks.
Happy to talk or discuss. Thanks.
Great.
Yeah, that's a great, I mean, it's a good point, and kind of emphasizes something we talked about, Andrew, that Seedon isn't designed to be your QA QC officer. It's just checking the data as it comes in. There should be a person checking the quality of the data, right, Andrew, prior to submission.
Yeah, and we're not trying to eliminate the need to review data and validate it on your end from a data submitter. But this is a way to kind of filter out or screen out some of the errors that we've seen commonly that have prevented us from using the data in our environments or out of our environment. So that's the intent, but doesn't mean it's going to take away the need to have a QA officer or some data manager review it and make sure that it meets your needs. The other thing that you mentioned, which was the more of the validation, with like if dissolved is higher than the total, that's confusing and doesn't make sense, right? Same with total versus like you mentioned with the coliform. I don't know if we're gonna be able to do that on the upfront checker, but we are exploring a different validation products from our vendor that would be able to be like a report that we could then generate from, which we could then make forward facing. So it'd be like another way of evaluating the data before you use it. And so these are great ideas of enhancements of this environment, and that's kind of the mindset that we have is it's an exchange network. It's meant to be focused on data use, data access, and it's everyone's data essentially. So it's important for us to be open to suggestions and ideas of how to improve these processes.
Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Any more questions for Andrew? Or letting him go, I want to say thank you to Andrew and to Greg for presenting at today's meeting. Really informative, obviously. Okay, before moving on to item 6, which is basically planning for the September meeting, I wanted to give a chance for, I mentioned him earlier as being the new Deputy Director for Division of Water Quality, Phil Crater, to come on and just kind of introduce himself and say hello.
Hey, Nick, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Well, yes.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Phil Crater with the State Water Board Division of Water Quality. I'm new to this group. I'm not new to the water boards. I've been with the boards since about 1998. Did about almost 10 years at the Central Valley Board working on water quality monitoring for agricultural drainage in the San Joaquin Valley. Spent another 8 or 9 years with the Division of Water Rights working on permitting. And I've been with the Division of Water Quality and our surface water programs since. I started in the Deputy Director job about a month ago. This is my first time attending this meeting, and I've got a lot to learn. So I just appreciate the opportunity to listen in today, and I look forward to working more closely with you all. So thanks, and it's very nice to meet you, and thanks for the presentations.
Thanks, Phil. And like I said before, we'll be briefing Phil in the next week or so, and then by September meeting, he'll be prepped and ready to go.
I appreciate that, Nick. Thanks.
All right, so on item 6, which is just a short item, and I think we'll be able to end about a half hour early, maybe a little bit more. Just to think about some items for September 26th, we've kind of talked about a couple items. Steve presented a few items earlier related to the ED&A and maybe getting some of the federal speakers on that topic, as well as AI and the ROMSPEC modeling. And we've also talked about potentially continuing the open data speaker series, and we've got some ideas internally, maybe getting some speakers from the Code 4 effort, as well as some others. But I'm open to other ideas. We've talked about ocean acidification a few times. It may be worth holding off until we are able to travel and meet in person. And I can talk to Bill and Jenna more about that. There's been some requests to maybe just hold one in Sacramento, but that still excludes some of the folks that we used to be able to reimburse through our travel budget to attend. And I don't want to be exclusive in that way. That's contrary to some of our more equitable movements. So we'll discuss that a little bit more with the co-chairs between the meetings, but I'm just kind of open it up for other ideas that maybe haven't been mentioned that you would like to pursue, and what the usual process is now is we come up with some ideas, and then I'll ping the council members that have brought up those ideas, or as well as the council at large, to kind of work with me to better describe the agenda topic and identify some speakers. It's been working well when we centralize around maybe one larger topic and have several speakers to that topic, rather than having a bunch of disparate ideas going on at once where it doesn't seem very congruous. So I'd like to keep it in that kind of format. So just kind of opening it up for any ideas that we haven't mentioned previously, or the ones that have come up. Ray, oh, glad to see that you made it. Hi, Ray.
Hi, everyone. Ray Heimstra, public member, a little late, but I'm here. I just thought I would suggest maybe Sean Bothwell, to speak on ocean acidification, obviously from an advocacy side, but I think it's an important issue, and hearing a variety of angles would be good.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks, Ray. Any other general ideas, or even within the open data, open science piece that you maybe you're aware of some folks that Greg and I and Wynn haven't interacted with? That would be good for that. Please reach out. And I'll be following up. If not, if I don't hear any other topics, I'll probably be following up with Steve and some others on some of the topics I heard today. And if that is it, we can go ahead and adjourn for today. I want to say thank you again to Greg and Andrew for speaking today, and thank you all for attending. Our next meeting is September 26th, and this recording will be posted up on our YouTube playlist, and I'll send it all out probably within the next day. And yeah, just thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Nick.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, great meeting. Thanks, Nick.